Thank you, Johanna. It's hard to measure up to a prayer like that, I feel. Um, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Pastor Mike, and my wife and I are the pastors here. And I apologize to any of you who maybe were hoping to hear her speak today, since I spoke last week. But it occurred to us in the middle of the week that between cooking lunch today and this trip that we had planned on Friday and Saturday, we needed to make some switches around. So I decided that I had some ideas and things, so I decided to give the message today. And I hope it's very meaningful to all of you. So last week, I shared about a book that I shared about a book that I was reading called The Leader Without a Title. And one of the things that was in the book that I really liked, but I didn't share about last week, was that there's a part in the book where the main character, the main person, he meets a mentor who kind of helps him to see his life from a new perspective. Up until that point, he just kind of been living without a vision or without a purpose, just kind of dragging along, not really making a lot of effort, and because he didn't think it mattered. And so one of the things that really got him thinking in the book was his mentor said, you know, you only have, if you look at your life in terms of how many months you're alive, then it's a very different kind of perspective. So, you know, you take, for example, that a person lives for 90 years, which is actually much higher than, you know, the average life expectancy. But if you live 90 years, then that's a little over 1,000 months. And I did the math, and I thought, well, I'm 32, and that means I've lived 392 months, and I have 688 months left, maybe. And in the book, you know, the main character, he's like, oh, you know, just kind of hit him like, you know, life isn't as long as you think it is. There's no guarantees, and we don't know how much time we have to make a difference or to make an impact in this world, or to leave our mark or leave our legacy behind. And when I thought about it too, I thought, wow, you know, when you think about your life in terms of months, 688 months, it kind of seems like a lot, but at the same time, it's, you know, counting down every month. And don't the months just go by so quickly? Every month, I mean, it was just like yesterday, I felt. We were celebrating 2017, and then it was like yesterday where we were like, hey, it's 2016. Can anyone believe it's 2016? And then before we know it, you know, life goes on, right? And life will be over. And it's just kind of it's always a valuable reminder. But the reason that I was thinking about this particular point was I had a conversation with a friend a few days ago, and he's living out in northwest Colorado, very small town Colorado, very different than anything you see around here or in the touristy mountain towns. And we were just talking and sharing, and he was saying how, you know, in the town, it's not like it's falling apart, but there's not much life in the town. I don't know if many of you have had this experience. When we lived in rural Missouri, we oftentimes drove through towns where you could see there wasn't much going on. You know, people worked in a certain simple industry. They were a mechanic or a, you know, coal worker or something like that. And there wasn't much else going on. Wasn't a whole lot of excitement. Oftentimes young people would move to the city to go to college and stay there. And this was kind of the situation of this town. It was a coal plant. And, you know, a lot of people just felt like, you know, just not a lot of desire to make a lot of effort. This was just from what I was hearing from my friend. And so even though they could do a lot of really simple things to really beautify their town and maybe attract tourists, you know, plant some flowers, you know, trim some trees, you know, maybe the people of the town could volunteer to get together to fix up some rundown buildings or paint some fences or something like that. But frankly, people just didn't really seem to care. And you could get that feeling when you went into the town. It wasn't like it was falling apart, but it was just kind of maintaining, and people weren't really making effort to go beyond that. And, he was saying, I don't know why I'm in this town, but I feel like God called me here to do something, to accomplish something. And, do you have any advice? Of course, I'm thinking like, wow, I don't know. But do you have any advice? Like, what could I do, as a one person to make a difference in this town? Maybe, to find the reason for which God called me to come here. And I said, well, when you look at a place where there's this kind of situation where there's not a lot of life and not a lot of initiative, my experience has been that the reason that happens is because people lose sight of a higher purpose or a vision. They're like, why is it worth just doing what's more than necessary to maintain things the way they are, like just life, just living life, taking care of, from honestly just to raise a family and to make money, that can consume an entire lifetime, right? It's actually a lot of work. And then to go beyond that and to ask of people to invest into their community. People can do it, and oftentimes people are willing to do it, but they need a reason. They need like, okay, well, I could do this, but what's going to happen? Like, what are we going to get out of it? Like, what's going to happen in the end if I go out of my way to invest time, energy, money that maybe I don't feel like I have a lot of? But without that sense of a purpose or without that sense of a vision, there's no reason to. But at the same time, I'm sure that many of you looking at your own lives can remember a time, or maybe you're living in that time right now, where you feel a lot of purpose. There's something that you're working towards, something that inspires you, gives you energy and strength. And it allows you to make the sacrifices that need to be made, or to go beyond doing the minimum. And I'm sure many of you have that experience, or have had that experience, how life-giving and inspiring that can be, even though maybe you'd be working harder than you would be otherwise. And, I know that maybe some of you might be kind of tired of me talking about this kind of a topic, talking about vision and purpose, and especially when we first came here, we talked about it a lot. And if you are tired of it, I really apologize. I don't get tired of talking about it because I always see it from a different perspective. And for me, I'm always thinking, why am I doing this? Earlier this week, I was looking at the dining room, and that's my cleaning area, and I was just kind of, I was hearing comments like, oh, this mess has been here for a long time, or this floor looks terrible, and I was thinking to myself, I really need to get on that job. And so I decided to take this week and to really do a really thorough cleaning of that room. But I kind of forgot that, well, if we're leaving on Friday to go for our trip, and then we're cooking lunch, that means we have to start on, like, before we leave. And everything just kind of caught up with me. And I found myself really asking myself, why bother to go through this added effort of doing these things that, many, honestly, some people will appreciate, but many people won't ever even notice. In my mind, I'm always thinking, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Always having to come to a greater realization of why this is important to me, why Adonia and I even bothered to come here in the first place. And one thing that I was thinking about is that part of the reason that, we came here in the first place back in, 2014 now? Because we knew that this community and this movement was something that was important to God, very important to God. And we felt that we could either be watchers and watch as things happened the way things happened, or we could step in and be participants in making a difference, and hopefully, making an improvement, although there's never any guarantees. we have what we have today because of many of our elder members in our movement who, during the prime years of their lives, of your lives, you gave up your personal ambitions, and you dropped that and you followed our founders, Reverend and Mrs. Moon, and you did what needed to be done. You participated in the conferences, you went fundraising, you went witnessing, you put aside your own personal ambitions, and you decided that you wanted to serve the higher purpose. You wanted to give to God. You wanted to do whatever it took. And to be honest, we wouldn't be here today. We wouldn't have what we have today if it wasn't for your sacrifice and your offering. And I mean, there's nothing that can be said to really, truly appreciate that. I was hearing from Roger, he was telling me the other day that, he was part of the original team that went out and fundraised for weeks, months, I don't know, in order to make the money so that they could buy this building. And they didn't even like this building. But, they were willing to, people like him, people like yourselves were willing to do what it took to be a participant and owner in God's providence. And I think that the last thing that any of you would like to see happen is for, after all those years of investment and all those years of offering and many times sacrifice, to see things fall apart. And to be honest, when we first came here, I really did feel like things were falling apart. I don't feel like that anymore. But that was just my kind of personal feeling, and after talking with people. Naturally, after all that investment, you want, even if some of your own children don't even believe in this faith anymore, you want to see that the effort and investment and everything that was put into creating what we have today continue to grow and to prosper and to flourish and thrive into, hopefully someday, a place where even those children could come and want to be a part of it again sometime later in their life. We can never lose hope on that kind of thing. For young people in the room and many of our new members, you really have to ask yourself, why do we believe in? Why do we believe in this movement? We didn't build it from the ground up with our own effort and with our bare hands, so to speak. Why should I invest into a community like this? Why should I invest into our movement? Why should I go beyond what it takes to take care of my family and invest my time and energy, my finances? How much do I really believe in it? These are questions that we really have to ask ourselves. And I really hope that you can see that the investments that you are making, it's really an investment into the future. It's an investment into our future. The future that doesn't exist now but will come to be in the years to pass. We have an opportunity for another beginning, a fresh start. And I really believe that it's worth us investing our time and our energy and our money into making it prosper and grow. And I believe that it's important to God. I really do. I think that, in our movement, we focus so much on what does God want? What does God need? How do we comfort the suffering heart of God? And I know that sometimes it's difficult to equate the things that we're doing in our community with what is important to God. I don't personally feel that there's a disconnect, but I can understand that sometimes it can be hard to see the value of doing the renovations, running the cafe, the guest speakers sometimes that we invite, or the different things that we do. For me, to be honest with you, I really feel like they're connected. Because what I feel, what Adonia and I really strongly feel is that what we're trying to do in this community through all those little things, although some of them may seem external, cleaning our church and things like that, but what we feel is creating the environment, creating the culture for God to be present in our community. Now, we don't have control over anybody or anything, you know? In a way, Adonia and I, we can't do anything. We can't come into your home and tell you and make you have a better relationship with your husband and wife. We can't come into your home and make your, kids love your parents, or make your parents love your kids more, or whatever it is that you may be dealing. We can't force your employer to give you a huge raise. But what we can do is that we can work to foster an environment where God can dwell more fully in our community, and I think that's very important. Thank you. And it's been our long hope that this community, and of course other communities, can be a community that can be an oasis, a place of rest for families that are having a hard time, or young people that are looking for what we have, or people who are looking for a greater truth than they've already discovered in their life. And it gives me great comfort. A lot of popping going on, worse than usual, I'm sorry. We've been trying to figure it out, but it's just, I don't know. It's given me great comfort to see many families appearing almost. As you got a chance to meet Christy and Sunduk, who moved here last week, a couple weeks ago, because they're looking for a community like this. They couldn't find it in other places. Yuka moved here, and she's just a wonderful help. And I got in, and then I don't know if you've met Mr. Che, James Che. He's not here today, but he met our movement 30 years ago. He's been living in Denver for many years. All of a sudden, he starts showing up. I'm like, who's this guy? And, we had him over, and we were sitting down to talk with him, and I realized, oh, man, this guy doesn't speak any English. And so we were like, well, thanks for coming, but we'll have to do this again with a translator. And then, Mrs. Tennant. I don't know how many of you have a chance to meet her, but she's been coming with her son Samuel from Colorado Springs a lot recently. And then I got an email this week, two messages. One is from a young couple that they passed through maybe a year ago, last summer, 6 or 7 months ago. And, they stayed at the parsonage. We had a nice kind of like a get-together dinner thing. And they were really inspired. And then he messaged me about a month ago, and he said they're looking at master's degrees programs. And they're looking at different places all over the country, including San Diego, where he's from, and New Jersey, where she's from, and Denver. And, obviously, when you're choosing a master's program, the quality of the community isn't the only consideration. But I was really surprised that it was a consideration, even though they could be close to her family or close to his family. But being around a community like this really meant something to them. And I received a message that looks like they're going to be coming here. So I was like, great. That's awesome. And then another a member who met our movement many years ago, who's been living in Missouri, he wrote me also the same day and said that him and his son are looking to move out here to Colorado, and if they could stay with us in June to look for places to rent out. So these kind of things are affirmations to me. They give me comfort to feel like maybe we're doing something right. Can only hope. God, please. You never know. You never know if you're doing anything right, I tell you. anyway, it was for this purpose that, we decided to come here and, leave a relatively comfortable life and take my mind, kind of a challenging position to be pastor of a community. And, when I looked at, when I asked people a year or two ago to take cleaning areas, pick an area, pick a bathroom, pick the chapel, pick the outdoors, and, let's keep our church clean and nice and just really like a welcoming environment, that I looked at the list and I saw the dining room, and there was a part of me that was like, I should take this because it's the hardest area. And, our founder, Reverend Moon, he was always a big advocate of taking the most difficult job, right? But then there was also a part of me that said, no one's going to want to take this room anyway. Who's going to want to clean the dining room? But I felt that, if I'm going to ask somebody to do something, I should be willing to do it even more so. I felt like that's the example that's been laid down for us, and I should try my best to be that example myself. But it always comes back to why and what's the point of it all, and that brings me to the next part of my sermon. Oh man, I didn't not even. Okay, so I meant to start off with this quote, but I'm gonna have to just put it in here. So this is a quote from our founder, Reverend Moon. He says, "In the sight of God, man's value will be elevated when his noble ideal is matched by his noble deeds. To acquire eternal value, you must live your ideal, and your value is further elevated to the extent that you must overcome obstacles to live your ideal. And your eternal spiritual value will be elevated in the sight of God with every step you take in living up to that particular goal." And I just thought this was a really great quote to really kind of sum up a lot of the feelings that I've been having lately. So I recently finished this book. It's called Conversations Beyond the Light with Departed Friends and Colleagues by Electronic Means. This is a very interesting book that I bought about 3 or 4 years ago when I was doing a lot of soul searching and really doubting God, doubting religion, doubting our faith, and I was looking for answers. Ironically, I didn't read it, but I kept it, and I just felt compelled to pick it up about a month ago and read it. And it's a very interesting book. Has anyone read this book by any chance? Oh, okay, I'm the first, great. This book is about some scientists who undertook upon themselves to find a way to communicate with the spirit world using technology. And of course, this book is written in 1995, and many of the technologies that existed prior to the writing of this book were very, compared to today, ancient. Things like, the old style TVs and radios and things like that. But they basically catalog their efforts and their successes in being able to communicate and record audio, conversing with people in the spirit world. And they use the book to kind of record down all their findings and observations. And it's a very fascinating book because they talk about how, in the spirit world, they worked with scientists to develop a lab in the spirit world that could communicate with their lab on the earthly plane. And then through this level of communication, through this method of communication, the people in the spirit world could put an image on their computer, and then they would go to their computer in their office and the image would be there on the computer, the physical computer. It's really interesting stuff, I thought. But what was much more interesting than because you can find all kinds of weird stuff out there, especially with the internet now and whatnot. But what I thought was very interesting about this book is that based on their observations and communications, they laid out their conclusions about the way the spirit world is. And it's very interesting because, normally, traditionally in religion, for example, if you look at Christianity, they have a very kind of simple understanding of the spirit world, whereas there's a hell and there's a heaven, or if you're Catholic, you believe in purgatory. And when we die, we go to the spirit world. We are judged in a way like you go to heaven or hell. And then if you go to heaven, you basically walk and talk with Jesus and live in eternal joy. You go to hell, you burn forever. And it's kind of fairly simple like that. And of course, different religions have different concepts of spirit world. But more and more people are having experiences and writing their experiences down, and technology is allowing for people who are having these experiences, out-of-body experiences, experiences where they have really unexplainable dreams, et cetera, to be able to get it out to the greater world. And many people are realizing that spirit world isn't as simple as religion makes it to seem. And many people's own experiences are backing that up, even though it may not always resonate with what they're being taught. And so what I thought was really interesting about this book is that our understanding of spirit world that we've been shown by our founders is very, very similar to the conclusions that they came to in this book. And I'm going to share some of those things. So just bear with me. There's a point to all this. So in one section of the book it says, so just for your context here, TimeStream is the name of the facility that they use. So interestingly enough, in all the data from TimeStream, there is no mention of a devil or God sentencing anyone to the lower planes, like hell, basically. Rather, man sentences himself by his own desires. What he deeply desires or wants acts as a magnetic attraction, attracting him to a plane where those things exist. In other words, it is our thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, and behavior that raise or lower the frequency of our astral body, and when we die, we simply go to the dimension that was compatible with our spirit. Reverend Moon says, it is not God who decides whether a person's spirit, this is from the Divine Principle, our main spiritual text. It is not God who decides whether a person's spirit enters heaven or hell upon his death. It is decided by the Spirit himself. Humans are created so that once they reach perfection, they will fully breathe the love of God. Those who committed sinful deeds while on earth become crippled spirits who are incapable of fully breathing in the love of God. They find it agonizing to stand before God, the center of true love. Of their own will, they choose to dwell in hell, far removed from the love of God. And the Bible says, whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. So I thought that was really surprising. It's so similar. The next part talks about your spirit body while you're alive, what you can do to raise or lower or grow or hurt your spirit body, which is not a concept that you typically hear about. So in the book, it says that if you want to grow your spirit, if you want to raise your spirit to a higher level or a higher resonance that's closer to God, then these are the things that you do during your earthly life. You love, I guess not do, but be. Love, compassion, service to others, an air of calm detachment. Not exactly sure what that means, but drinking pure water and breathing clean air, and a realistic concept of spiritual existence. And on the other hand, the other direction is fear, hatred, and resentment, egotism and selfishness, attachment to worldly things, using alcohol, tobacco, and drugs regularly, hurting other people or animals with malicious intent, and spiritual ignorance or major misunderstanding. And from the Divine Principle, it says, good or evil in the conduct of this physical self is the main determinant of whether the spirit self becomes good or evil. This is because the physical self provides a certain element, which we call the vitality element, to the spirit self. In our everyday experience, our mind rejoices when our physical self performs good deeds, but feels anxiety after evil conduct. This is because vitality elements, which can be good or evil according to the deeds of the physical self, are infused into our spirit self. So, these two statements are corroborating or confirming that, actually the actions that we take in our lives, they don't just end when we pass on and go to the next world. They actually become infused into our spirit. And through the actions that we make on a daily basis, every day in our lives, the way that we relate with people, the way that we think, our spirit becomes infused with those elements, and we take those with us to the spirit world. Here's another statement from the book. A problem is that on earth, a life seems interminably long while we're living it. Doesn't it? It feels so long. Yet, on the astral plane, there is no time. And to the people who live on the astral plane, a human life is only a short dream, hardly remembered. Yes, this life that to you is so important and which takes up all your energy is only a flick of God's eyelash. That's a statement. But we have something similar here from a speech, I believe, from 1977. Compared to the vast spirit world, this earthly life is small in scope. Compared to eternity, the span of your life is just a puff. Just one breath may be compared to eternity. So should your concern still be about earthly life? If you do, it is because you don't know about that vast world up there. So I really enjoyed reading the book. There was parts of it that were kind of dry, but overall it was just really just another confirmation of what we've already been taught and what we're already understanding and what people are already experiencing. Here's the book, by the way. My dad's got dibs on it, but if anyone wants to borrow afterwards, you're more than welcome. So the point is going back to, talking about how many months we have to live and vision and focus is that, we only have so many months of our lives. And even though we live in life and life seems difficult at times and life seems long, reality is life is short. And it's too short to be living without a vision or a purpose, a direction, something that we're working towards and inspired to accomplish. And I'm just grateful to all of you for supporting this community and supporting our vision. And God bless you all, and have a great week.